Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a book published way back in 1937. Tiny initial run, like 5,000 copies.
Right. Nobody really expected much, did they? Not the author, not the publisher.
Not at all. But then something, well, pretty extraordinary happened. This book didn't just sell a bit. It absolutely exploded.
Yeah, they were rushing editions to press, weren't they? Just trying to keep up with demand.
Exactly. It went international, translated into pretty much every language you can think of. And the title.
The title itself became like a common phrase, right? Part of the English language.
It did. Still use it today.
And what was this massive hit all about? It was basically a guide to navigating, the messy, complex world of human connection.
Yeah, how do we get along with people? How do we understand them? And crucially, how do we maybe influence them in a good way?
That's exactly what we're diving deep into today. We're pulling directly from excerpts of that classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
And this wasn't just someone's random theories, right? It was built on years of real-world experience, research, principles tested over and over by thousands of actual adults.
Right. Our mission here is really to sort of cut through all the noise and pull out the most valuable stuff, the practical bits from the text, specifically for you.
Think of it like a shortcut, maybe. A focused look at what really counts when you're dealing with people day in, day out.
And the reason it hit such a nerve back then, and honestly why it still does, it taps into something really fundamental, doesn't it?
It really does. The source mentions this huge survey, University of Chicago, the YMCA schools, spent a fortune, like $25,000, 2 years.
Wow.
Just asking adults in a typical town, what are you really interested in?
Okay, so what did they find? Health, I imagine.
Yep, health was number one. No big surprise there. But number two,
People.
people. How to understand them, how to get along, how to make people like you, how to, influence their thinking.
So there's this real, hunger for practical advice on human relations.
Exactly. And according to the source, there just wasn't a good working manual out there at the time.
And this book filled that gap based on principles from, what did the author call it, a laboratory.
Yeah, his courses with thousands of adults over 15 years, experimenting, researching. The claim is these principles work like magic.
Magic is a strong word. Does the source back that up?
Yeah, it gives some examples. Like an employer, 314 employees, whose whole business and even his home life were totally changed.
Okay.
Salespeople boosting their sales dramatically. Executives getting more authority, bigger paychecks. One guy even saved his career at 65 using these ideas.
Wow. That's pretty compelling.
It makes you think of that William James idea, right? That we're all sort of only half awake, using just a tiny bit of our potential, especially when it comes to dealing with people.
Yeah, and Dr. Hibben's point about education being the ability to handle life's situations, this book is sort of aiming to unlock those hidden assets we all have.
So if we want to tap into that, where's the starting point? The source points to something really common, almost instinctive, but destructive.
I think I know where you're going with this. The first big don't.
Exactly. It leads right into a core principle: don't criticize, condemn, or complain. And the book uses some pretty vivid examples to drive this home.
Like that story of Two Gun Crowley, the killer, even when he was cornered, facing the electric chair.
What did he say? This is what I get for defending myself.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. He didn't blame himself at all.
No, he rationalized, justified it. And Al Capone, same thing, public enemy number one, quoted saying he spent his best years giving people the lighter pleasures and all he got was abuse. It's amazing, isn't it? Even people like that rarely blame themselves.
They justify everything. The source mentions Albert Fall Teapot Dome scandal back in the 20s.
Right, went to prison.
For taking bribes, basically. Yet, he still found ways to rationalize it, feel sorry for himself. Criticism just bounces off that kind of self-justification.
It really does. And think about Lincoln. As a young guy, he wrote these really nasty, sarcastic letters.
Well, yeah.
And it created lifelong enemies. He learned the hard way. Later on, he became incredibly cautious, even with generals messing up during the Civil War. He held back the criticism.
That takes incredible restraint.
It does. And the source even includes bits from that poem, Father Forgets. It's heartbreaking, really.
How so?
The father is just constantly nagging his son, finding fault, dirty hands, messy room, interrupting, just endless criticism.
Oh, I think I know that feeling.
Right. But then later, the father feels this wave of remorse. He realizes he was judging his kid by adult standards, totally overlooking all the good things about him because he was so focused on the faults.
Oof. Yeah, that hits home. It shows how that habit really damages things, leads to regret.
So the absolute foundational takeaway here is
Right.
criticism. It's futile. It just makes people defensive, hurts their pride, creates resentment.
And it almost never actually changes behavior long term, does it? Often makes things worse.
Exactly. It's dangerous.
Okay, that makes total sense. So if criticism is out, if it's like throwing sand in the gears, what's the alternative? What actually works? How do you build that positive connection?
Right. If we stop criticizing, what do we do? And this gets us to the heart of building relationships. The source talks about a big secret of human motivation.
Okay, I'm listening. The big secret is,
There's only one way to get anybody to do anything.
which is,
Make the other person want to do it. Yeah.
not force them, not trick them,
Mhm.
make them want it.
Precisely. The source is clear. Things like threats or force. They might work short term, but the fallout is bad. Real influence comes from tapping into their desires.
Which links back to those fundamental human drives. The source mentions Freud, but really emphasizes John Dewey's idea.
The desire to be important, that's the one. That deep, deep need almost everyone has to feel significant, valued, like they matter.
Okay, so understanding that desire,
Yeah.
that unlocks the next set of principles.
Exactly. And a really fundamental way to tap into that and make people like you is principle 1, actually, become genuinely interested in other people.
Genuinely interested. Sounds simple, maybe too simple.
Well, think about it. The source mentions that phone company study the word I used hundreds of times in conversations.
Guilty as charged.
Or a group photo whose face do you look for first? It's always your own, right? We're naturally wired to be interested in ourselves.
Makes sense.
And Alfred Adler, the psychologist, he put it really strongly. The source quotes him basically saying that people not interested in others cause the most problems and are the source of all human failures.
Wow, that's intense. Lack of interest in others leads to failure.
That's his take. But the flip side is powerful. Genuine interest works wonders. Think about Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Even his servants loved him because he actually made an effort, remembered their names like James and Annie Amos. He'd even interrupt work to call his wife over to see a bird outside her window. Small things, but showed he cared.
That's impressive for a president.
Or Dale Carnegie himself, getting famous authors for his course. He couldn't pay them much.
So how do you do it?
He wrote letters expressing real, specific admiration for their work, their success. He showed genuine interest in them and what they knew. He appealed to their interest in themselves.
Oh, okay. Flattery, but
Yeah.
sincere flattery based on genuine interest.
Exactly. And there's that touching story, too, about the student nurse and the lonely girl in the hospital on Thanksgiving.
Right.
The nurse didn't just do her duties. She shared her own loneliness, brought the girl dinner, stayed late, just showed real human interest and sympathy. Made a huge difference.
Yeah, that one sticks with you.
And one more quick example, the fuel salesman, Naffel, struggled for years to sell to this one chain store guy.
What changed?
He stopped talking about his fuel. Instead, he got genuinely interested in the executive and his problems, his business. That shift opened the door completely. Like Publius Syrus said ages ago, we are interested in others when they are interested in us. It's reciprocal.
Okay, so genuine interest is huge. What else? You mentioned something simple on your
Yep.
face.
Principle 2, smile.
Just smile.
Well, the source is careful here. Not a fake mechanical grin. It has to be a real smile. Comes from feeling warmth or interest inside.
Right, the kind that reaches your eyes.
Exactly. And research actually backs this up. Professor McConnell found smiling makes you more effective in everything: managing, teaching, selling, even raising happier kids. Encouragement, often with a smile, beats punishment every time.
I can believe that. The source mentioned a department store manager.
Yeah, choosing a smiling high school dropout over a gloomy PhD for a sales job, the smile was considered the bigger asset for connecting with people.
And it works over the phone too, right? You can sort of hear a smile.
Totally changes the tone. And the story of Bill the Grouch, that's a great illustration.
Remind me.
Miserable guy, critical at home, grumpy at work, decided, just as an experiment, to force himself to smile and greet people all day. His wife, coworkers, people on the street. It transformed his life. He became happier, relationships improved, and it happened alongside him starting to be less critical and more interested in others. The smile seemed to unlock those other changes.
That's amazing. Just deciding to smile.
Yeah, like that old Chinese proverb, a man without a smiling face must not open a shop. Simple, but profound. The source even shares that value of a smile piece.
Right. Costs nothing, Creates happiness, antidote for trouble.
It's a powerful free tool we all have.
Okay, so genuine interest, a real smile. What's next for building that connection?
Remembering and using names, principle 3. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
The sweetest sound. I like that. The source had some legendary examples, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Jim Farley supposedly knew 50,000 people by their first names.
50,000. How is that even possible?
Hard to imagine, right? But the source credits that personal touch with helping FDR get to the White House. Farley ran his campaign.
Wow. And Andrew Carnegie, the industrialist.
Used it to seal a massive deal with Pullman. How? By suggesting the new company be named after Pullman, the Pullman Palace Car Company. Appealed right to his ego, his sense of importance tied to his name.
Smart move.
Even FDR used it in small ways. Remembering a mechanic's name, thanking him personally, sending a signed photo later.
Right.
Small gesture, huge impact, makes people feel seen.
Yeah, that politician's quote nails it. To recall a voter's name is statesmanship. To forget it is oblivion. And it's not just politics, is it? Business, social life.
Everywhere. Your name is yours. Hearing it makes the interaction personal. Napoleon III even had a whole system for remembering names, repeating, associating, writing it down.
Works on a smaller scale, too, right? Like that story about Ken Nottingham and Eunice, the cafeteria worker.
Exactly. She was just going through the motions, kind of sullen. He noticed her name tag, smiled, said, "Hello, Eunice."
And the whole interaction changed.
Instantly, she lit up, service became friendly, generous, just using her name flipped a switch. It really is like a little bit of magic.
Okay, so I'm showing genuine interest, I'm smiling, I'm using their name. What's the next step in having a really good interaction?
You listen. Really listen. Principle 4, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Ah, this taps back into that self-interest thing again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
People love talking about themselves.
Absolutely. The classic story is Carnegie at that dinner party with the botanist.
Right, Carnegie knew nothing about plants.
But he just listened intently, asked questions, let the botanist talk about his passion. End of the night, the botanist thinks Carnegie is the most fascinating conversationalist ever.
Just because he listened well.
Exactly. Charles W. Eliot, the Harvard president, said there's no mystery to good business communication.
Wow.
Exclusive attention to the person who is speaking to you is very important. Nothing else is so flattering as that.
It's not just being quiet, it's active listening, right? Like how Henry James described Eliot, listening, posture, eye contact, really engage.
Listening with your mind and ears, making the speaker feel heard.
That Mr. Detmer story is amazing too. The customer raging about a bill.
Yeah, Detmer just let him vent completely. Didn't interrupt, didn't argue, just listened. Then he validated the guy's feelings, built some rapport.
And ended up getting paid, getting a bigger order, and making a lifelong friend. All from listening.
Incredible, isn't it? It just underlines that basic truth. People are way, way more interested in themselves, their toothache, their job, their kids, than they are in you and your stuff. So be interested in their world.
Okay, makes perfect sense. So interest, smile, name, listen. What ties this section together?
It comes back to that core desire. Principle 6. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
Sincerity is key there, isn't it?
Absolutely. This connects right back to Dewey's desire to be important and William James's unused powers. We can actually help people unlock potential by making them feel genuinely valued and capable.
Like the Marie the dishwasher story.
Beautiful example. Someone saw past her job, saw her potential, told her about the treasures within, giving her that feeling of importance, a reputation to live up to. It changed her whole life, even how she looked.
Wow. And specific praise helps make it feel sincere, right? Like Keith Roper in The Printer.
Exactly. Roper didn't just say, "good job." He pointed to a specific piece of work, explained why it was excellent and why it mattered to the company. That specificity made the praise land, and it turned the employee's attitude right around.
Or the dentist, Dr. Fitzhugh, with the charwoman not cleaning well.
Instead of criticizing, he praised her, called her most conscientious, gave her a fine reputation to live up to, and she did.
It's like you're setting a positive expectation.
Exactly. Napoleon called titles and honors toys because men are ruled by toys, meaning they're motivated by feeling important. And Mrs. Gent, stopping the kids wrecking her lawn by making the ringleader her detective, same idea, appealed to their desire for status and importance.
Okay, so those are some really powerful ways to connect with people on a human level. Avoid criticism, be interested, smile, use names, listen, make them feel important.
Foundational stuff.
Great. So once you've built that rapport, that connection, How do you then move towards actually influencing someone, getting them to see your point of view, maybe change their mind, without resorting to force or argument?
Right. And the first thing, again, is what not to do. Argue. We touched on that. Winning an argument often means losing the relationship or the chance to influence.
So no arguing, what do you do?
This leads right into a principle that bridges liking and influencing. Principle 8. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
Well, empathy again, like Carnegie with a hotel rent.
Exactly. He won that negotiation not by focusing on his needs, but because he spent serious time first thinking through the whole situation entirely from the landlord's perspective, listing the pros and cons for the landlord.
That Henry Ford quote really hits here. If there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view. It sounds so simple, but doing it consistently, that's tough.
It takes real effort. Carnegie apparently said he'd rather pace the sidewalk for 2 hours before a big meeting than go in without having really thought through the other person's viewpoint and likely reactions. Preparation based on empathy.
Okay, so see their side. And building on that, the source has that magic phrase, based on sympathy.
Yes. The phrase, "I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do."
Wow, that sounds incredibly disarming. Why does it work so well?
Because if you can truly say it sincerely, it's usually true. If you had their exact background, pressures, experiences, you probably would feel the same way. It validates their feelings, lowers their defenses instantly. The source says most people are just hungering for sympathy.
It even relates back to Al Capone, right? Suggesting if you saw his background, maybe you'd understand, even if you don't condone.
Exactly. It opens the door to understanding. And the Louisa May Alcott story is a perfect example. Carnegie gets this angry letter about a tiny error.
His first instinct is to get mad back.
Right, but he stops himself, apologizes profusely, and crucially, says he understands why she'd be upset, validates her feelings. Poof, her anger vanishes. She ends up apologizing to him.
Amazing. Sympathy diffuses anger.
President Taft did something similar with that mother demanding a job for her son. Instead of getting stern, he waited, cooled off, then wrote a sympathetic letter acknowledging her disappointment as a mother while explaining his constraints. It worked. She accepted it gracefully.
So even if you can't give them what they want, validating their feelings goes a long, long way.
Huge difference. Okay, another angle for influencing thinking. Instead of pressure, try appealing to the nobler motives.
Nobler motives. What does that mean exactly?
Recognizing that most people want to see themselves as fair, honest, ethical. They have ideals. You appeal to that side of them.
Like John D. Rockefeller Jr. with the photographers taking pictures of his kids.
Perfect example. He didn't order them to stop. He appealed to their shared humanity as parents. You've got children yourselves. You know it's not good for youngsters. He spoke to their better selves.
And Cyrus Curtis getting authors like Alcott to write for less money.
By appealing to their charitable side, he sent the payment directly to her favorite charity. Made it about doing good, not just the fee.
Clever. And that story about the customer complaint.
Right. The company rep listened, apologized, praised the customer's fairness, then appealed to his nobler motives by asking him to adjust the bill himself, trusting his sense of fairness. And the customer was fair.
Wow. Trusting people's better nature can actually bring it out. That's powerful.
Okay, shifting slightly. How do you encourage change or improvement, especially after someone's made a mistake? The source suggests. Talk about your own mistakes first.
Admitting your own flaws before pointing out theirs.
Exactly. It's incredibly disarming. Carnegie did this with his young niece, Josephine, who was struggling as his secretary. Before criticizing, he stopped and thought about all the stupid mistakes he made at her age.
Gave him perspective.
Totally. Softened his whole approach, made his guidance feel like shared experience, not judgment. It just clears the air, makes people receptive.
Like Clarence Zerhusen with his son trying cigarettes.
Yeah, instead of a lecture, he shared his own long struggle with smoking, how hard it was to quit, how nicotine beat him. Sharing his own failure made his concern for his son land much harder.
Shows you're human, you get it. You're not judging from on high.
Exactly. It builds connection, even when discussing something difficult.
Okay, another big one, especially at work. No one likes to take orders.
So true. People resist being told what to do. Ida Tarbell described Owen D. Young's style at GE.
He never gave direct orders.
Never. Always suggestions. You might consider this. Do you think that would work? What do you think of this? He empowered people, let them feel ownership.
Like that factory manager needing a rush order.
Instead of barking, "Work faster," he presented the problem. This order can't be filled on time. Then he asked the team, Can you figure out ways we could do it?
Made it their challenge to solve.
Exactly. And they jumped on it with a "we can do it" attitude. Asking questions sparks initiative way better than giving orders.
Makes sense. Okay, final one in this influencing section. And it feels really important, especially when things go wrong. Let the other person save face.
Oh, this is critical. It's about preserving dignity. Think about GE and Charles Steinmetz, the brilliant scientist who was a terrible manager.
Right, they needed to move him but didn't want to crush him.
So they didn't demote him. They gave him a fancy new title, consulting engineer, for stuff he was already great at, and quietly put someone else in charge of the department. He kept his dignity. The company got better management. Win-win.
Contrast that with the story of the VP who just tore into a supervisor in front of everyone.
Oh, yeah. Terrible. Humiliated the guy, destroyed his confidence, lost a potentially valuable employee who went to a competitor. Public shaming is just devastating.
But Amazon's boss handled her mistake beautifully, didn't he?
Absolutely. She made a big error. He knew. But he started the meeting praising her effort, acknowledged the difficulty. When they discussed the error, he used "we," what we could learn, where we go next. Framed it as a shared learning moment, offered support.
Allowed her to keep her dignity completely.
And probably made her incredibly loyal and dedicated as a result. Saving face is about basic human respect.
So all these techniques for influencing, seeing their view, sympathizing, appealing to better motives, admitting flaws, asking questions, saving face, they all come back to understanding and respecting the other person, don't they?
Fundamentally, yes. It's about genuine connection, not manipulation.
Okay, so we have all these powerful principles. How do we actually, make them stick, make them part of how we operate? The source had tips for that, right? Getting the most out of the book.
It did, and it wasn't just about reading. First step, develop a real deep desire to master these ideas. You have to actually want to get better at dealing with people.
So motivation first. Then,
don't just read it once. Read it. Reread it. Stop and think. Ask yourself, how can I apply this today? Highlight things. Review your notes.
active engagement, not passive reading.
Exactly. But the absolute most critical part, application. You have to consciously practice these principles every chance you get. At work, at home, ordering coffee.
And keep track of what works.
Yes. Keep a little record of your successes. When you use a principle and get a positive result, write it down. Seeing it work reinforces the learning and motivates you to keep going.
That makes sense. Practice and positive reinforcement. And it helps to remember the guy who came up with all this, Dale Carnegie. The source mentions his story.
Yeah, Lowell Thomas's introduction paints a picture. He wasn't some naturally gifted social butterfly. He struggled hard.
Failed salesman, crying in a hotel room, riding freight trains because he was broke.
That's the story. He desperately needed self-confidence himself.
And his famous course, it started as public speaking, but then it morphed.
Right. He realized adults wanted help with public speaking, sure, but they were even more desperate for help with just basic human relations, getting along, influencing people positively.
And his core belief was
that anyone can talk if they're fired up about something. But the real key to confidence was doing the thing you fear. He literally forced his students to speak over and over, building successful experiences. He apparently listened to and critiqued something like 150,000 talks.
Wow. Talk about practice.
His main mission, as he saw it, was helping people conquer fear and develop courage. And that legacy is still huge, isn't it? The Dale Carnegie courses are still everywhere, used by individuals, big companies, shows the ideas still resonate.
Absolutely. So, reflecting on our deep dive, we've covered a lot of ground. From why you shouldn't criticize, to the power of genuine interest, a smile, using names, listening.
Making people feel important, seeing their perspective, sympathizing, appealing to nobler motives, admitting your own mistakes, asking questions, letting people save face.
It all seems to circle back to that core idea, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Real connection and influence come from understanding and appreciating the other person, focusing on their needs, their desires, their perspective.
Exactly. It's not about force. It's not about manipulation in the negative sense. It's about genuine human connection.
And these truths, they seem simple, but maybe that's why they're so often ignored, because they require effort, moving beyond our own default self-focus.
Could be. Remember that Ford quote? Again, 90% of people ignoring the other's viewpoint 90% of the time. It takes conscious effort to swim against that current.
But the potential payoff is huge. These aren't abstract theories. They're practical tools. Tools you listening can start using immediately, today, in any conversation.
At work, with family, ordering lunch. They can genuinely change the dynamic of your interactions and, ultimately, your relationships and results.
So maybe a final thought to leave people with. If true influence really comes from understanding and connection, not trying to control people, how much energy are we wasting trying to force things?
And maybe ask yourself, what's just one principle from all of this that you could consciously practice today? Maybe it's just making eye contact and offering a real smile to the next person you interact with. Or maybe it's biting your tongue the next time you feel like criticizing. Or truly listening without interrupting. What small step could you take right now?
Because that small step,
Yeah.
practiced consistently,
Yeah.
that could be the start of unlocking so much of that unused potential in your own life and relationships. The power really is in your hands, isn't it?